Hi, and welcome to Gender Nebulous episode 39. Today we have a special guest, Eva Echo. Eva is an activist, public speaker, and writer, and my lovely co-host, Ms. Frida Wallace. So hi to both of you.
Hi,
Hi.
it's great to have Eva. I've been wanting to get Eva on for ages, and I've been mithering her on Instagram and on emails, and she's just really busy, aren't you, all the time?
Always.
It's great to be busy, but finally got an evening to talk to you. So thank you for your time.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
We really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
it is really nice to have you on. I mean, you are very active in the transgender world of activism. You do a lot of stuff. So I think, can we start with talking with your involvement with Trans in the City? So I know you're a director there. So
yeah, that's a relatively new thing, to be fair. I mean, I've always been a massive supporter of Trans in the City. I absolutely love what they do, their approach, their ethic behind it. Yeah, so anything I can do to support them. I mean, last year at Trans in the City, I did a bit of a keynote during the daytime section. And then a fireside chat with Roz in the evening.
Yeah.
And then I went on to win one of the awards, which I completely blown away by, was not expecting. I just thought I was there to do some talking. But yeah, I've always looked up to everyone that was already a director. I mean, Bobby is just absolutely
she's amazing, isn't she?
Stuff that she does, and the passion and energy that she has is so inspiring. And after the awards and that evening itself, had a catch up with Bobby soon after, and she asked if I wanted to come on board and be part of the team, and I just jumped at the chance.
Yeah, cool. So you won the Community Champion Award, didn't you? And that was
I did, yeah.
It was kind of shared with Katie Neves because you both got the same thing, didn't you?
We did, yes.
I think it was impossible to pick between the two.
Did you have to split it in half? Did you have to?
No, I think they could afford two. There was one each.
Timeshare.
Yeah, we did got one each.
Right, lovely. So I was going to say, like with you being active as an activist, do you do a lot of media? And
Yes.
And like what I find, like I've done some media and I've done a bit of media training and I've been on telly, and I find the hardest thing about it sometimes is the people interviewing you don't know the facts. So you sort of have to educate them sometimes. Do you find that people are open to being, corrected sometimes?
Yeah. It depends on the situation, really, and whether, obviously which channel it is,
yeah, definitely,
or which station. But I'm always open for a challenge. I mean, at the end of the day, I've got nothing to hide when I go on these shows. I was on Jeremy Vine on his radio show a few weeks ago, and that was regarding the Hogwarts game. And I know about his reputation. I know what he can be like, but at the same time, if I didn't do it and nobody else wanted to do it, then we wouldn't have a voice. So I just said, why not? Let's go for it. As long as I always say, as long as you know what you're talking about, you have some statistics to back yourself up, and you're confident enough to be able to talk and deliver the point succinctly, then you shouldn't really have to hide or worry. In fact, in that particular interview, I managed to put some points across that actually stumped him completely. So if it shuts him up, then
I think I've got to say the problem with people like Vine, I mean, it's not so much Vine, it's the production teams around things like that. They tend to pick quite clickbaity articles, and so you're kind of going into a trap already, aren't you? Because I know, because I've done like Talk TV and GB News, and I've been criticised for doing it because people see them as the enemy, but I like to get in the way of that conversation. So it's like, it's not an echo chamber, is it? So it's like going into the bear pit kind of thing. So
I mean, if we were to just kind of distance ourselves from channels like like GBBs, then we wouldn't ever have a say, and the people that watch and tune in will only ever hear one version of events, and we're just doing ourselves an injustice. So as much as it can be incredibly tedious, incredibly difficult, it's important that we don't shirk from these challenges, because otherwise, whatever's happening now, the rhetoric that we're seeing all over the media, that's only going to get worse.
Yeah, it just seems to be getting worse, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it really does seem to be getting worse. I mean, every time you look on social media at the moment, there's some horrible story. It's definitely getting worse. I mean, how do you cope with that, Eva? Because you are very visible.
Get used to it. I mean, I never really started out wanting to be visible. I mean, when I came out, I thought, you know what, I started writing a blog to externalize my thoughts and everything that I was feeling. And I was naive and thinking, well, you know, there are millions of websites. No one's going to read mine, but people did. And that's when it kind of dawned on me that I'm not alone in this. Lots of people feel, you know, similar to the experiences that I went through. And I thought, well, this is no longer about me. I thought I would just come out, transition, and kind of just pop back into whatever work stream I was doing at the time. And I quickly realized that it can't just be like that. Now that I'm out, I've got to use my voice and privilege in any way I can to help other people. And it kind of grew from there, really. And I set up an Instagram page, and it's just grown ever since. And
yeah, I like your approach and the way you visualize things on Instagram, and you make them kind of poppy, you know what I mean? If you understand what I mean, it's like there's a sort of artistic element to the stuff you put on, so it's good to look at. You know, it kind of draws you in because it's visually interesting as well as factually interesting.
Yeah,
It's
I think, well, I mean, I've always been creative, and that's where that element comes through. But I think for me, Instagram or any social media use, the turning point for me was not really caring what people thought of me. Like, you know, you look at these Instagram accounts where people have, like, you know, quite a lot of followers, and they're all pretty much following each other, doing the same thing, almost like they feel they have to put out a certain image or a certain role. The way I look at it is, you know, I've played a certain role up until the point that I came out. Why the hell am I still doing it afterward? I'm just going to be me online, and I don't take myself very seriously, and I put out what I want to put out.
Yeah, I was going to say, me and Vicky have talked about this before, but I think when you do come out, and obviously we have to navigate social media, you're kind of a visual protest, whether you want to be or not.
Yeah.
So your whole existence to some people is an affront to their reality. So if you come, someone like me kind of leans into it, because I mean, I write a blog called The Turf Reich, for God's sake. So I'm kind of mocking it and then using humor to take it down. But I'm leaning into it. So when it comes for me, I'm kind of like, it's hard for me to say, oh, well, poor me, because I've actually sort of baited it quite a bit. But there's a point, the reason I'm doing that is because I've built this defense. So I think sometimes I don't know about you, but I sometimes think the visual images we put out are a shield. So, because we do want to look our best when we're on social media, and we do that. But I think sometimes, you know, there's the real you, and then there's the social media you. And I just don't, I was wanting to ask how you feel about that. Do you feel like there's something in that?
I'm the same, whether I'm on social media or in real life, really. I just got to the point where I'm like, I'm done pretending. I cannot be bothered with that anymore. I juggled that, you know, before I came out, having to be in the closet about being trans, having to juggle essentially two personalities. And now I just don't even have the time for it. I mean, I don't even have the time to go through all my DMs and things like that. So it's one of those things where I think it's been a rite of passage in getting to this point and finding my own coping mechanism. Like, I know when to engage with people that are anti-trans and whatever comments they put on there, but I also know when to just completely ignore them, because my attitude is, well, there are certain people who do not put a comment on there to be educated. They want to throw out hate just to get a reaction. Now, it makes me think, well, what sort of person feels the need to do that? And if I give in and I react to it, I'm simply handing control over to them. But if they throw out a comment at me and I choose to ignore it, then I still hold that control. It's my personal space online in this, you know, in this social media world. And, you know, they're the ones, you know, getting bent out of shape during the evening about it, where I'm just cracking on doing my own thing, and, you know, I've not got anything to worry about. So it's taken me to kind of find that approach to almost find peace with being on social media, when, you know, we all know, especially on Twitter, it's such a horrible place. But that's the way I cope. I mean, I know Charlie Craig's she is quite ruthless when she deals with trolls, and that's her way. You know, it's hilarious.
I think you could. I think
that's her.
Yeah, I think that's a really good approach to ignore it. But I think sometimes with me, I think I sort of like to anger them a bit. You know what I mean? It's like, but perhaps I shouldn't be doing that. I don't know how you feel about that, Vicky. But
yeah, I mean, Frida, your kind of activism online is kind of like confrontational almost.
But it's humorous, right?
It is. It's humorous, and yeah, I don't really go online much these days on Twitter. I'm not really on there too much because of how nasty it can get. I think my kind of activism is more kind of doing things like this podcast and things with work. It's kind of a bit of a it's not so kind of on the TV kind of stuff. It's a bit less obvious, I guess. But each their own. I mean, we have these discussions around how effective is your activism and what you do. I think the really important thing is that we should all do what we're comfortable doing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if that leads to more things, well, yeah, great.
Exactly. We all have a skill at the end of the day, and we all have an experience that we can lean into.
Yeah, I think with the I think sometimes there's so much information out there. And there's so much reading to do if you want. It can be a bit overwhelming. So you've just got to find that little bit of it that you can excel in, maybe. And I think that's what you do.
Yeah, find your niche.
Yeah, find the bit you like. And I like being a bit funny and trying to take the mick a bit. And I like that because it makes me feel better. But so yeah, I was going to go on to talk about, because as a community, sometimes people say the trans community. But I think we're all different in our own ways, but we're united by experience. And one of the things that united us and galvanized us was the tragic murder of Brianna Jai. And that was to us, it was kind of like, I've been warning you. We felt like we've been warning you about this. It's not, it's not come out of nowhere, has it? And so when I went onto the media, I think Vicky could tell I went through a bit of a phase where I was getting a bit too angry because of it. So I thought, and I noticed you did an interview at the vigil. Was that in Birmingham? Sorry,
it was. Yeah,
yeah. And at that, on that interview, you're saying, we need to, obviously you're being positive and you're taking stock of the situation. And there's some kids there, pretty much proving your point. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah. I mean, whilst we were setting up for the vigil, I was doing a lot of media interviews, and for one particular interview I'm sure most people have seen the clip now. It's gone viral. I was talking about hate crime because that's something that I'm involved in when we look at criminal justice, and I was pointing out the fact that people aren't born with hate. It's a learned behavior, and it comes from somewhere. And it just happened that, there are a group of youths coming through who decided to target the vigil and, shouting anti-LGBTQ plus slurs. And, they didn't want to leave it at that because they moved through, they went behind me being interviewed. I'm sure they thought it was live at the time so that they could just shout these obscenities. They got to the other end and they basically came back through for another go. Now, that is not they're not the actions of people who are opportunists. The fact that they decided, let's go back for more. One of them actually pulled out a balaclava as they were walking up and put it over the head and then put the hood up. And one of them had a knife. So
very intimidating.
It's, no one goes out thinking, I've got my keys, my wallet, my balaclava, my knife. That's a very, specific person there. But it comes down to, yes, they are full of hate, but where does that hate come from? And yes, they've proved the point. But at the same time, we could deal with people like that, absolutely. But, dealing with it won't prevent it. We need to get to the root cause of it. If that's education, if that's raising more awareness, if that's sitting down and talking to them directly, then fine, we need to find ways through. Otherwise, it's going to be history repeating itself over and over again.
Yeah, so how was that situation resolved there? Did they just leave in the end?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, like, the community, like the LGBTQ plus community as a whole, aren't great fans of the police, let's put it that way. But at the same time, we do need them. We live in a society where they play an integral part. Now, it's all very well saying the police do not belong at, occasions like that or any sort of queer events. We don't need them. We do. And what happened that night proved that we did. And, during the organising of it, people were saying, like, I don't expect police to be there. They're not welcome. We don't need them. This is for the community. Fine. But you can't be trans and not be visible, like you said earlier. It's not like when you come out as gay, you look exactly the same. You have to challenge people just by saying, I am trans, this is my existence now. And we do need that protection, given the political climate, what's going on in the media. We do need protection. But sadly, the only protection we can call upon is the police. And I had messages afterwards, after that clip went viral, saying, where were the police when you need them? Isn't it typical of the police just ignoring, the community like that?
Yeah, the police get that for both sides, but we
exactly. I basically had to say, well, hang on a minute. You specifically said the police are not welcome, and now that we need the police, they're not there, and you still blame them. So how do we move forward from that?
I think possibly there's lots of reasons to criticize the police. We've seen recently with the Met Police and misogyny, and trans people suffer that same misogyny. Because I remember being quite young and I was mugged in Manchester, and I went to find a police officer, and he said, well, if you're going to go out dressed like that kind of attitude, and it's the same misogyny, it's exactly the same. So I think that's why people do, because you only have to have one bad experience with the police.
Yeah.
And because it's such a public-facing organisation, and unfortunately, lots and lots of people, we can't get away from it, have. We've interviewed Paul Bloomer on here, who's, LGBT advocate for the police. And we spoke to him directly, and he told us about his experience. So it kind of reflects what you're saying there about, we can't live with them. Sometimes we can't live without them. But would you prefer a world without them? Possibly not, Yeah,
so, I think we all collectively know, police officers who are trans or part of the community. So, it's not all bad. There is that element.
Yeah,
as well.
I meet police officers through my work with the ambulance service, so quite close to the police sometimes. And it's like the difference between somebody that's gone into that job for the wrong reasons and somebody that has gone for the right reasons is huge,
Yeah.
And you like to think that the vetting process and the training might weed some of that out. That's the hope, isn't it?
That's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think also it's worth remembering that whatever we hear in the media is always going to be bad. Happy stories don't sell papers, so they will always put that that doom and gloom spin on it. But when we look at a force the size of the Met, we're hearing this negativity. But think about all the good experiences, because if you have a bad experience with a police officer, with the police force, you're going to tell people. When you tell people, you have that immediate empathy of, those your peers around you saying, well, of course, I feel really bad that you've had to go through that. Damn the police, all this, this, that, and the other. But if you were to have a good response and a great experience with the police, and you were to tell your friends down the pub, for example, are you going to be taken seriously? No, they'll look at you like you've just kicked the cat or something. Because they don't resonate with that. Exactly. Right, and because of that, you are even less likely to talk about that positive experience ever again. And because of how it was received. So there is a part of us that kind of needs to say, okay, let's draw a line here. We're telling the police they need to do better. If they've proved time and time again they don't know how to do better, then let's step in and show them. And for me, that's how I got into criminal justice.
That's great.
So your involvement with trans in the city, we spoke about that a bit earlier. What is your role there? I know you're one of the directors, but I'm not quite sure what your specific role is.
So I'm looking after media at the moment.
Media, okay.
Lead. Yeah, so social media, that side of things. I've always loved being creative and coming out with content. So yeah, I jumped at the chance to be able to get involved with that side of it.
So you're involved with the kind of like the pink news collaboration with
dealing with that side of it. Yeah, the social media side of it, planning content and getting certain information out there, and eventually as we go forward with events, following some of the team that go out and about and get involved with conferences and filming behind the scenes to show people what actually goes on, because there's so much great work out there, but over the years, unfortunately, none of it has been disseminated into the community because the social media presence wasn't there. So we now need to shout about the great work that's being done.
Needs to be more visible. Yeah,
absolutely.
So it's TDOV tomorrow.
It is.
Yeah.
So
go out there and be visible.
I've been having a terrible week this week because I've been trying to persuade my company or kind of coach them, like drag them, like herd them like cats into, getting into the sponsorship thing with Trans in the City. I know it's changed a little bit this year, but, there's a lot of kind of squabbling, let's say, going on in the background between people who are just trans people and then the organizations within the company that are supposed to deal with this stuff, and they kind of don't do what they're supposed to do, and it gets all very
tedious,
kind of agitated and tedious. So I've been dealing with that all week. We were supposed to be lighting up buildings and putting up flags. The flags are going up, but we've not been able to get the buildings lit up because of some sensibilities.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say, it's amazing how, because they're quite small gestures, aren't they? Like putting a flag.
Yeah, I mean, it's really
up,
easy. Put some lights up. They've got lights there anyway.
And people don't realise how important that is, because it sends a message to staff and perhaps potential employees of a company, or like when when the ambulance, they're pretty good with stuff because we work with the uni and Unison. So I'm quite good at, I'm quite used to them being good, but it's like sometimes you feel like you've got to my the people, you know what I mean, like pester them.
And then
to
you
do
come
something.
up against some big manager, some director who's like doesn't really understand it, and you have to persuade them why it's a good thing. It's just exhausting.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, as a community, we spend most of our time justifying our own existence. Like, whether every time I do an interview with someone new, I pretty much have to come out all over again because I'm having to justify why I'm sat there in front of them doing an interview. And other things like, I always look at things like flags and, decorations around an office or whatnot. I always look at that and think, okay, what's the intention? Anyone can put a flag up. Anyone can say, let's use pronouns now as a company. But what's the intention behind it? Because that's the most important thing. If there are good intentions, fine.
I mean, you've got to get the messaging right and the
otherwise, it's just another tick box.
Otherwise it's just another flag, isn't it? I mean, it's So, are you doing anything exciting for TDOV tomorrow?
Going down to New Scotland Yard to do a keynote.
That's great.
So that's
I think
sounds a bit scary.
I think I saw the promotion for that, and surprise, I saw a few of the lobby groups. I'm not going to mention any names. You can imagine. Got hold of it and started to retweet it, and I thought this is going to be a pile-on. But you see, the people that do that, why do they feel threatened by one day of the police actually doing something like that? Because it's like, it just baffles me. I've threatened.
So are you going in there and doing a speech to the police?
There will be officers in there. They'll be online as well.
That's great.
Okay, that's good.
So and then I'm going to come back and doing a keynote in the evening in Birmingham as well. So
wow, you're going to be busy.
So keeps me busy.
You see, this is one of the reasons they don't like us being visible, because when they see that we are effective, we're just getting on with life. We're not necessarily exceptional, or we're not, because I think sometimes with trans people, the publics perceive us as some kind, either this weird exotic thing or this scary thing, which just actually if you were just to look at what we actually do in real life, it's not, it's pretty normal, and it's like, most of it is not unusual. That's
I think that's one of the threats, though, that our existence becomes normalized, because then people have to accept the fact that they were wrong. And now psychologically, as a collective, as a society, people can't do that. They're not ready for that yet. I mean, you only have to look at Scottish gender recognition reform recently. When that was passed and it was heading towards royal assent, people got desperate. People got incredibly twitchy, and it was anti-trans people. And the reason why was simply because if the bill went through and it proved that there were no trans women taking advantage of a process to commit crimes against women and girls, then it will have proved that everything that they've said all along has been a complete lie. So rather than suffer that inevitable consequence, it's been a case of, we really need to ramp it up now and prevent it from going through.
They definitely doubled down.
We've definitely seen a ramp up recently, with what was going on with the Scottish GRR, and then what we've been seeing in New Zealand and Australia over the past few days. I mean, sometimes
I sometimes think that there are certain journalists either willfully ignorant or just part of the attack on us, because it's very rare you'll see. I mean, obviously the Daily Mail is the Daily Mail, and they're always going to, but they're kind of led by lobby groups, aren't they? They're kind of I don't know. They kind of every story you kind of reads as some kind of duplicitous message, and it's like by the time that's where Jeremy Vine gets his talking points from. So it's kind of like a downward spiral all the time of clickbait, culture war stuff, and I suppose that fear narrative is something that gets it gets those likes, shares, and retweets going, and that's
how they make their money. I mean, at the end of the day, whether it's us or whether it's people seeking asylum, they need something salacious to dangle out there to get the clicks, to get to get the money in, because if people don't tune into the website, people don't buy the physical papers, they don't have money, they don't have advertising revenue. So they rely on this. And it just so happens that, places like the Daily Mail have become notorious for it. And, it's always driven by money at the end of the day.
I think that's why we appreciate someone like you, Eva, who goes into the media, and you're very articulate, and you've got the information behind you. If somebody asked you a question, I'm pretty sure you'd be able to answer it pretty quickly, and that's why I say thank you for what you do, because I'm always saying to people, just if you get opportunity to go and speak to people, but a lot of trans people are really shy, and why should they be good at media? They're just people getting on with their lives. But sometimes there is
a lot of pressure put on us to be experts in these things that you've never done before. It's very difficult to just suddenly you're on TV and you ask.
Well, I was going to say,
difficult questions.
Sometimes it frustrates me that because I'm quite gobby, I'll talk.
Really? I hadn't noticed.
I'll talk to anyone, me. But sometimes, why isn't everybody like me? But if everybody was like me,
I'm not going to answer that one, Frida.
And I think, you're right that as a trans person, every time I speak to people, I'm expected to justify. I'm expected to have all the answers. The way I see it is, why can't they justify to us? When they ask about trans women in sport,
exactly.
They're asking me for the answers. Well, I'd like to turn around and ask them, or why is it you have a problem with it?
That's what I do when
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's what I've tended to do when I've gone on Talk TV. My approach is always, right, why are you having this conversation now? Why do you suddenly care about the welfare of women in prison? Why do you suddenly care about fairness in sport?
I think when you ask them that, it kind of stops them in the tracks, doesn't it? It's like, because then they have to think, why am I doing this?
Why do Tories suddenly care about the welfare of people in prison when they have always never done before?
Exactly.
And the other argument always comes up about single-sex spaces, and it's like there's always this sexual salacious kind of narrative there. Like nobody's allowed to be a person without some kind of sexual threat. And it's just really weird that like when I socialize, when I go out and I'm out with my female friends or whatever, it's the last thing on anybody's mind, anything like that. And the only fear I have now when I go into a restroom or anything like that, I think, oh God, is there going to be a turf here?
Exactly.
That's the only thing I think.
I think more trans women are scared of using public toilets now than actual allegedly cisgender women being scared of anything happening in them. There was a survey conducted in the US about 7 years ago now, and they found I think it was about 59% of trans women avoided using public bathrooms. They wouldn't eat or drink throughout the day when they're out in public, just to avoid using public restrooms.
Well, it's I've got a friend who likes going swimming, and my friend asked, she said, "Do you want to come swimming with me?" And I had to think then for me, oh my God, what about getting changed and stuff? And they said, they've got cubicles, But because I've been fear-led by this crap on social media, I actually started to think, oh my God, somebody's going to attack me, something's going to go wrong. But it's never happened before, so why would it happen now? But it's like I sometimes think that these people like to scare the weaker-minded people, because some of the bigger lobby groups, they rely on their little followers to boost them, don't they? So the more, like, if I was to comment, I can tell if I comment on something I know I'm going to get all the little attack dogs coming at me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're all linked to one or two very specific big accounts. So it's kind of like a sort of synaptic kind of hellscape, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
I did go off on a bit of a tangent there.
Yeah, I think, confidence is really important because, you're talking about the fear of, that trans women have of going to certain places if they're not, maybe they're not been out very long, or there's reasons why they're kind of a bit nervous. I mean, I think once you've gained some confidence, it makes it so much easier. I mean, Eva, your confidence to do the things you do, you're talking in front of hundreds of people. I mean, where does that confidence come from? Is that something that you've struggled with, or have you always been confident?
I actually suffer from social anxiety.
Do you?
So
it doesn't show.
It doesn't show because, like, when I go out and do like work-related things, it's work. So therefore, I have that to hide behind.
Yeah.
I put my work hat on and I'm doing it because of a job. When I go out and about, if at the weekend, if we go out for a drink, meet some friends, I am just like, I'm really, worried about bumping into people or meeting new people and things like that. So yeah, for me, it's almost like armor that I to be able to be booked to talk to a company or to do this, that, and the other. That is my protection. But also, I used to be a musician, so playing gigs, going on tour, you get used to that exposure where you are thrown in front of it. At the time, being a drummer, I had a drum kit to hide behind, but you're still put in these positions where you're going on stage, you have to do it whether you like it or not. You can't let people down. So that kind of got me into it. But then it wasn't until lockdown, the first lockdown during the pandemic, that I was forced to think about things differently. Until then, I'd never do like video content on social media. Any recorded or video interviews I ever did with TV, for example, I would always ask, to watch it again to get playback of it.
Yeah.
Just because I was so conscious of everything about how people would perceive me. But then I was part of a project during the first lockdown, and someone found out I was a fan of Carmen Carrera, and they basically said, well, you can interview her then. And like, I was literally thrown in at the deep end having to interview her. And I think that kind of made me sit up and think, it's not so bad, why have I been so scared? And that kind of just opened my eyes to it.
Who was that? Sorry.
Now you've got like no fear at all.
Sorry, you just mentioned someone's name and I wasn't sure.
Yeah, Carmen Carrera.
Oh, right. Who's that?
She was on RuPaul's Drag Race in one of the early seasons, and she is now a trans advocate.
Wow, yeah. Well, I recognise who you mean now. Yeah, when he said RuPaul's. But I was going to say, like, sometimes, like, I've done TikToks and stuff like that. And sometimes I have this flush of confidence and I'm, like, really bubbly. And then the next day I'm thinking, oh, my God, I just can't be bothered. I feel like that quite a lot.
It's exhausting. It really is, though, Rita. And, it's hard to keep yourself going at times.
Sometimes I'll upload something and then look at it later and go, oh, my God, delete.
So, Eva, are there any other organisations that you're involved with, other than Trans in City that we spoke about? I mean, are you involved in some small?
Quite a few things. I'm Director of Innovation at Birmingham Pride.
Okay, what's that? I've not heard of that one.
So Birmingham Pride, which is, Pride in Birmingham.
Innovation. What was the
innovation? So yeah, that basically my role is to look at creating new initiatives and creating things that don't exist that the community need, looking for opportunities to expand, whether it's education, certain like events or whatever, pushing the boat out to make sure that Birmingham Pride is always as inclusive as it can be. I mean, at the moment, as far as I'm aware, we are one of the most diverse Pride teams in the UK.
Is there a trans Pride in Birmingham?
There isn't. No, there has been talk of one being set up, and there is a grassroots community that have been trying to get that.
It's a bit of a strange one because in some sense you just want to be part of Pride, but then sometimes there is a need. There is different issues for trans people. So
is Birmingham Pride? I've never been to Birmingham Pride, but is that still kind of more of a protest than a Pride? I mean, the Manchester one's very commercialised. So is London. I mean, is Birmingham going that way, or are you trying to keep it more?
No, we're trying to keep it grassroots, trying to keep it as real as we can, because at the end of the day, we recognise, yes, people do want to kick back and celebrate because we've been through a lot. Why not? Let's have that celebration. Exactly. But at the same time, you know, we do have that protest element. We work all year round, as much as people think it's just a once a year party at the weekend. You know, we have a community foundation where the proceeds and the revenue from that weekend go back into the community. So we've got a large pot of money where I'm one of the trustees of the foundation, where we, you know, people apply, grassroots communities want to create things for others. They apply to this fund, and you know, we enable them, we help them forward so that they can make these things happen. So we're very much there to serve and listen to the community, but we also get involved as well, using our platform, using our voice when there is something that does impact the community, where we can speak out and represent the community as well. So yeah, you know, it's absolutely amazing to be a part of that and work all year round to make sure that when something happens, for example, like what happened with Brianna, that we're there to support, but we're also there to be a voice and to really openly discuss the issues at stake, so that
I think this was one of the problems in Manchester, because with Pride becoming such a big commercial thing, there was a group set up called Reclaim Pride, and what they were trying to do is, you know, it used to be that the local pubs in the gay village would all get together and do, but increasingly these venues are owned by conglomerates that don't really have any community connection. So they're just run by managers that come and go, and it's kind of lost its soul a bit. And so we're trying to get that back a bit more in Manchester.
I think it's also down to what people want, because you know, we're at the point now where people expect a big headliner, people expect safety, people want
security.
But then that's the thing; it costs money. You know, if you have this political background at the moment where you know, trans people are constantly under attack, hate crime. You know, last year the Home Office released the stat that 56% increase in transphobic hate crime in 12 months. As hate crime's going up and up and up, and we have to think about safety, and we can't have safety without security, without ring fencing certain areas, blocking off roads, and that costs money.
And you have to protect people.
Exactly, and if people want the entertainment, that costs as well. You know, we always try and go for, you know, LGBTQ plus acts first and foremost at Birmingham Pride. We rather than go for, you know, the big headliners who just want to take money, we want to give space to queer acts, up and coming acts, and also acts that people really relate to, because, you know, it's part of our childhood, part of our growing up. So all that costs money, unfortunately. So it is that balance of, you know, being able to fund it, to create it, but at the same time, there's a fine line before you overstep it, and it just becomes all about that money.
Well, it
really is a fine balance, isn't it, between
it's like a double-edged sword, isn't it? And
because there's another event in Manchester, which is the Sparkle thing, which is, it's all in the park on Canal Street.
Yeah, that's kind of improved.
That's
over
not
the
commercial
last
at all. That's kind of like a fun event. They have a stage as stalls. It's kind of a much smaller thing than the main Manchester Pride, but I think that's managed to maintain its kind of grassroots so far. I mean, it's more of a, I don't know, it's a bit of a celebration, isn't it? It's
yeah, I mean, successful because they listen to the people and about what they want, and they make that happen rather than just.
I think they get sponsorship money. I don't think the acts do it for nothing. You know, Ginny Lemon was there last year, for example.
Ginny Lemon was great.
I'm sure she charges a fee, but I think the money's raised by local events for the event.
It was so hot that day.
It was right in the middle of the heat wave.
I was sat down and I didn't realise how sunburnt I was getting, and I've been drinking cider. And when I stood up, I think I just blacked out. I couldn't get back. They wouldn't let me back in because they thought I was just drunk.
It was probably that bottle of Prosecco we had in that little bar beforehand. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So it's good that, you know, it's brilliant because like I'm from Bolton, which is just outside Manchester, and Bolton never had a Pride until recently. And this year, because it was really nice because Bolton's a bit of a, I can't say backward, but they're a bit, let's say they're a bit Brexit in Bolton.
So it's an industrial kind of
it's kind of like lost its kind of, you know, economic power, really. There's a lot of, you know, people.
I mean, Bolton used to be a huge economic power in the, you know, go back 40 years, 50 years.
But this, you know, but it was great to see Pride there because, you know, So, because to me, Pride is first and foremost, it's about inclusion. So it's like a family event. And I've noticed, like, sometimes, like, online and stuff, because there are people that try and demonize us. So when they see, like, a drag queen with a child, they'll take that picture and they'll just use that as some kind of evidence of, you know, the decline of Western society. When actually, it's kind of the opposite of that. It's like, you know, it's trying to teach it. Yeah, it's a celebration, you know.
Well, let's talk about Pink News, because I know you're involved with that a little bit. So is that kind of to do with your role in media with Trans in the City?
Yeah, so
I know
Pink News
there's
is
a
the
bit of a
media
collaboration going on there, isn't there, between the
media
two?
partner of Trans in the City. But I mean, I've been involved with Pink News and done events for them in the past. Especially their Futures event, which is all about progressing into the workplace from education, doing talks, you know, with students and employers to talk about inclusion in the workplace. And
and that's the connection with Trans in the City, the workplace thing.
Yeah. So I mean, that's it's a place where, when we think about it, when we go to work, we spend so much of our lives there. It's about a third of our life. So we know we need that environment to be safe, to understand and to be educated, because it's almost like a sitcom. You're just thrown into this environment with people you don't know, you've never met before.
I mean, it's really interesting to see, you know, some of these big corporations now are all getting involved with Trans in the City. You know, there's something like 300 big corporations involved, and they're all doing, you know, amazing inclusive things for trans non-binary inclusion.
I think there's been a broader recognition of inclusion, and also the need to really, you know, like, really shape up your workplace culture properly, because you know, everyone, you only have to look at the Met. You know, there's been report after report about the culture, but the thing is, we focus on the Met purely because of what a police force stands for or should stand for, and then to have that culture is, you know, a bit of a kick in the teeth. But, you know, let's not forget that these cultures, these toxic cultures, have been happening in all organizations all over the UK, you know, some covertly, some openly. And we must never forget that it's not just a police force or not just one company. It can happen in so many.
Yeah, these things are systemic, aren't they?
Exactly. And I think there's been this wake-up call now for employees to realize we do need to be more inclusive, because as we move forward, we can't keep using outdated models, outdated ways of thinking. We've got to cater for everybody. It took the pandemic for employers to realize that hybrid working would work, that even a 4-day week would work as well. So we are making a lot of progress now, and people are realizing that change isn't necessarily a bad thing at all.
I think sometimes
we're finally seeing some companies, you know, actually providing trans healthcare as well, aren't we, in terms of insurance and stuff?
There are some fantastic
we've never seen before
packages out there, like Amazon, Adobe. They have incredibly comprehensive packages that rival any healthcare, you know, state healthcare in the world. And that is recognition that a certain population within their organization need specific healthcare benefits that are different to others. And it's the recognition of, we'll cater for that then.
I mean, I remember when they did that, there was a speech at Trans in the City 2 years ago where Clifford Chance, can't remember the guy's name, but he was talking about his experience of, you know, trying to persuade Clifford Chance management to change their insurance thing. And they actually ended up, you know, it was actually the same price or cheaper to provide trans inclusion for healthcare, because there's so few of us.
That was Tate. Yeah, my good friend.
Tate. Yeah, that's right.
There, and that's the thing, you know, it takes someone within the community to say, actually, these are my needs. They're slightly different to everybody else, but it also takes an inclusive, progressive employer to go, let's look into it at least. And that's when they realize, actually, it doesn't cost.
It didn't cost any more. It's like, why are we not doing this?
All this time we've been gatekeeping certain employees, when really we could actually offer this for the same price. And if anything, our turnover potentially will go down in terms of retaining staff. That will be a much healthier,
attracting staff.
Exactly, and attracting new staff, because you're basically saying, look, we can do even more for different members of society.
Yeah, so I mean, things like that are great. I mean, we need to kind of spread the word, don't we, within all these kind of large corps, that that's the way to go. I think, with a really large corporation like the one I work for, where they don't offer healthcare as a benefit, it's a little bit different because, it's not given, you have to pay for it. So it's a bit of a slightly different calculation, but, it's definitely the way to go. I'm not sure how we get there, but
I think we talked about this
Eva,
before,
you can
didn't
help us out with that one.
Well, because sometimes there's big corporations, and then there might be a little company, and it'll be just that one person in that company that makes the difference, because there might be one person that comes out in that company, like comes out as gay or trans or whatever, and they'll have a perspective then to kind of tell. It might be a company of just 10 people, but if that happens, that company will be then forever of that legacy. And if the company grows, great. But because people need that confidence, in that initial confidence to say, hang on a minute, could we not change this? Because it probably wouldn't take much effort, would it, actually?
It doesn't. And it doesn't take much effort at all. I mean, I think that the hardest part is like convincing people that this is a good idea to do this.
But all changes like that, even like something as simple as like changing the colour of something, has to have a meeting.
It's true that, actually.
Yeah. And sadly, different organisations have different procedures, like if it's a massive organisation, there's a lot of red tape, there's a lot of paperwork involved, whereas a smaller organisation with less of a hierarchy, they're able to do it. But there's always ways to do it. I mean, like last year I got involved with legal action against NHS England, and I never thought I'd do that, because you take as big as NHS, England. But there are ways, working with the Good Law projects has really that there are.
So how did that case end up?
You're appealing it, aren't you?
Yeah, we went to the High Court at the end of November for a hearing which lasted a day and a half.
Yeah.
The judgment was handed down earlier this year, and it went against us. However, one good thing that came out of it was that NHS England tried to argue that trans youths were not covered under the Equality Act against discrimination, because when you're that age, you can't yet say for sure whether you will go for gender reassignment. However, the judge ruled that, just taking the steps of socially transitioning is intent towards that, and therefore you are covered. So that's been a huge win.
So there's a big win there, even though the case.
But we are appealing. It was
so how is that being funded? I mean, these are really expensive things to do, aren't they?
Yes, unfortunately, we have gone over on some of the costs at the moment, so we're having to crowdfund for the appeal. Last time I checked, we're on about 23,000.
So the legal team was Good Law Project, were they?
Yes, so we need 50 grand for the appeal.
Right.
And we just need to keep pushing away. And the really promising thing was that when we applied to appeal the judgment, Mr. Justice Chamberlain himself granted that request. That's typically, that's unheard of for a High Court judge to say, I give you permission to appeal against my own decision. And in the comments, he did note that should we go to that Court of Appeal, it was highly probable that Court of Appeal judges would find and rule differently to him. So, that is incredibly promising. And this doesn't just affect trans people. This is something where we're doing it, yes, because it's trans related, that, we're waiting years just for a first appointment. However, the way that our case is set out is that we're challenging NHS's 18-week constitution, the referral to treatment. Yeah. If we're successful, it could open the doors for so many people in other areas of the NHS who are having to wait in excess of 18 weeks. So this has a huge knock-on effect for all these patients that are waiting. So, that's why there's even more drive to really make this a success.
So what is, I'm not sure if you're allowed to talk about it, but what is the basis of the appeal?
We're basically going, one of the main grounds we focused on was that this 18-week referral to treatment target is a legal duty. NHS England have always argued that it's just that, it's a target duty. It's not legally
it's an aspiration,
enforceable.
But it's not the law.
Yeah, and we've basically argued, well, what's the point of a target if there's absolutely no incentive to even achieve it? That it's pointless. To actually set out in a constitution that you have a target means you are making a commitment towards achieving that. And unfortunately, they're not even reaching that in a number of areas. So that's been one of our main arguments, and that's something that will continue in the appeal.
So anybody who wanted to, give some money towards that, where would they go? Is it to
if you go on the Good Law Project site,
Good Law Project site, they can donate specifically to that cause, can't they?
It will be, yes.
Yeah.
I know that Good Law Project have helped with mermaids, haven't they? In their case with LGBT Alliance, and obviously
they do a lot of good work.
I mean that,
yeah,
because that just kind of revealed to me how kind of petty these people are who are against us. Because I had followed Good Law Project on Twitter, and it's kind of like, they don't realize that I always have a phrase that is, a high tide lifts all boats. Because like when this stuff doesn't just affect trans people, it's like it's good for society as a whole. And it's like we're not just campaigning for our own, we are campaigning for what we think we should be entitled to, but it goes beyond that. Like you said, it's about it cuts across the board, really.
Yeah, definitely. All social injustices are interlinked. I mean, for me, I'm a claimant in this case because I've been waiting by August about 6 years for my first appointment. But if if we win this case, I won't magically go to the top of the queue, and I'm fine with that. I don't want that.
No.
I want there to be some recognition of, we have failed the trans community, and indeed we failed other areas of the NHS and other patients too. So it always has a knock-on effect, and we need to always have that mindset of, we need to do things for more than just us, because transphobia, for example, affects everybody. It's not just the trans community. Last year in the US, because of all the transphobia, there was a female athlete who was doing really, really well. And she was accused of being transgender purely for two things.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
But the fact that she was doing extremely well, but also because she didn't look feminine enough. So transphobia is incredibly harmful to the wider society, because we start then policing what people should and shouldn't look like.
And it kind of, when there's these stories all the time, like I've seen what's happening in America, with them stripping away trans healthcare in southern states and Florida. It takes people's eyes off the real problems, because if they're focusing on, I always say this when I'm in interviews, it's like purposely looking the wrong way, because here it's a problem, right? We could always say we always have the best interests of trans children. We should always, we get the best psychiatrists, get the best psychologists, the best counselling, but that story is distraction from a lot of mental health problems for other children. And when those cases are in the news, it's like there's a question mark over that. Why are they? Well, we know why they're focusing on trans issues, because that's kind of the shoe-in for some kind of political aim, and that just seems to be the way it's going. Because obviously we've talked about this, we're ramping up to like a sort of a presidential election in the next few 18 months or so. So I think we're going to see a lot more of it in the media, scare stories about that. But
you don't have to look back to the Partygate scandal. Any time that Boris was in the Commons after PMQs, where he'd say something and it's looking a bit hairy for him, the next day there's an article all over various papers about trans people. We've become a distraction tactic, and when they've got nothing to use, then it's asylum seekers. They will always look for a distraction,
easy target,
so that people don't focus on their own mistakes and their own absolute just atrocities.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we always kind of talk about is collaboration. There's sometimes, amongst the community, there's kind of disagreements, lines of fracture. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on, what do you think we should be doing as a community to, work and collaborate better together? And, and where do you think we're going with that? Because I think we're really kind of missing a lot of collaboration opportunities. I always kind of go on about this one. I've had discussions with Bobby on this, and I'm really kind of trying to promote collaboration between organizations, so that because we're all trying to do the same thing, and we all kind of do it a little bit differently, but we really need to work together.
I think we did definitely need some sort of direction. I've always said that if the LGBTQ plus community was to form some sort of political party, we'd be unstoppable because we would have a manifesto, we would have some sort of direction. And like all political parties or any sort of massive group, not everyone's going to agree, and that's absolutely fine. You know, we would be really suspicious if everyone did agree. But at the moment, we're at this place where everyone's kind of breaking apart and everyone's breaking off doing their own thing. There isn't enough cohesion between the queer community, and we need to think, how did we get here? What are we actually trying to achieve? Because, you know, back when it was Section 28, the fight against that was literally to have it repealed. You saw an end goal. When we look at, you know, gender recognition reform or self-ID, you have an end goal. But when you've got so many identities and so much intersectionality, it's difficult to identify that. And I think that's the problem we're at the moment. We need like regular conferences where we can get all the charity groups, all the organizations together and really discuss what are the overarching topics right now.
I mean, what are the priorities for the community as a whole, and what should we be kind of all working towards?
Move forward. And I feel that once we realize we are moving forwards towards one goal or a number of goals, we'll start to realize that we can put aside differences and we can allow each other's differences because we're ultimately united by certain things. And the thing is, we should have, what's frustrating is we should realize this already, you know. We're essentially going through what you know, gay people were dragged through back in the 80s. So it's a difficult time, and we need to remember our roots. And that's exactly why Pride is so important, why visibility is so important, because it's a constant reminder of what we're trying to fight for.
It's interesting, though, the identity of being trans isn't really an identity. It's just something I happen to be. And the delineation of trans and cis is just how, you know, it's an academic thing. So I think sometimes, like, just because, you know, somebody's trans, there's a lot of trans people who are just not politically active at all. They just don't, and then why should they be? You know, there's no reason. But I think trans people that are politically active would be politically active anyway, because it's not the trans bit that makes you want to. It's not the trans bit that makes me want to do this podcast, but because there was no media out there, and I was constantly saying, why are we never on the telly? Why? I said, all right, we're going to have to make our own media, so that's why trans people are incredibly creative, and we are and I think some people should sometimes, because we obviously, there's a lot of negative stuff about us, but if we're anything, we're resourceful because we've got to get the stuff out there. And if somebody else won't do it, we'll have to do it ourselves. And I think that's what I see. That's what I've seen. That's what impresses me about you, Eva, because you've got your Instagram, and I just sometimes when I'm a bit fed up, I'll just have a look at your Instagram. And it's like,
but I think Eva, you're working towards that collaboration. You're involved with so many things that you must be doing that automatically anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like I recently got involved with Met Police, so I'm now part of their learning and development team. So, basically,
you can kind of pull all the threads together
and creating opportunities. Yeah, I mean, like this age-old argument of police aren't, you know, welcome at Pride or within the community. Okay, let's help them. So if no one else is willing,
let's try and solve that problem.
I'll put myself forward, and you know, I spend time with new recruits, challenging certain behaviors, educating them on the actual things that they're going to experience within their communities. And there's a huge, you know, diverse group of us who are community members that go there, spend time with them, so that, you know, yes, you know, the college and the curriculum down at Hendon can teach them certain things like Miranda rights, the law, how to make an arrest, but we go in there and we provide this other side of it, and that is the community lived experience.
So is that your kind of day job, you know, other than
that's part of it? Yeah, I also work with the Crown. I also sit on the Crown Prosecution Service's hate crime panel. So again, as a community member, going in there and saying, well, you know, like we look at historical past cases from start to finish. What was victim support like? Why did you not consider this angle? What the right questions asked at the right time? And we feed that back so that we can create a more robust, more inclusive system that actually focuses in the right areas.
So you're kind of right in the front line here. I mean, you're involved in all these different things, and you're able to pull things together and kind of, do that collaboration thing that we're kind of missing.
I'm a firm believer in, like, if you see something wrong, try and do something about it. There's no point whinging about it. And if it means me having to roll my sleeves up and get involved, then so be it.
Yeah.
And I was with what you were saying there about hate crimes, because it just reminded me of something I've seen a lot happen recently. Because when the subjects of hate crimes comes up, I've seen a lot of people use this phrase wokery. Oh, it's just woke. You just got to be toughen up, because that used to be the attitude. I remember getting the bus or a train as a young queer person, and you kind of took your chances. There was like no British Transport Police to report anything to. You just, if you got on the wrong train on a match day, you were going to get abused.
Yeah,
I think that is a hate crime, but there are some people with the attitude still of hate crimes are not real crimes. Well, I think because especially in Manchester, we had the case of Sophie Lancaster. Sophie Lancaster wasn't trans; she just happened to look different.
Yeah,
and the police actually, because of the Sophie Lancaster Foundation and Sophie's mum campaigning, they actually did a lot. And I think that's what the trans community could do. Like what happened after Brianna's murder, I thought this is something good has to come of this. So that's what I was trying to do. Like start to put. I know it's just amazing what you're doing with that, because that's
Thank you.
Yeah. So is there anything you want to promote? I mean, specifically.
No, I would say, if I'm going to promote anything, it's try and be as positive as you can. I know that, times are bad at the moment, but they won't stay bad forever. I mean, history has taught us that.
Yeah.
And we have to recognize that we can lean on each other, not just within the trans community, but, other marginalized groups. They're facing similar things that we as a trans community are facing as well. So there is, the safety in numbers. Let's come together and help each other, because as I said, all social injustices are interlinked. And when we look at certain things, it's not just about being trans. It's about, for example, me being trans, a person of color, my working class background. We have to help each other and use our experiences to identify where our strengths are and where we can come together. And just be there for each other. There's a lot of bitching and a lot of dog eat dog out there at the moment, and we just need to move past that and think, we're not at that point yet where we have the rights where we can settle back. The things that we've worked hard for and our predecessors have worked hard for, they can be taken away just like that. You only have to look at other countries. Look at what happened in Poland. That it can, and we're in danger of that if we become.
I think this government. I think we've never been closer to that point where you think, gosh, things could go really bad for us. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it's like hot air. It's like.
I mean, a lot of it is posturing, isn't it? And there's an election coming up. So.
And let's not get too into that, because it's just a bit negative. But I just wanted to thank you for coming on, and it's been been really good. It's just like I think we've covered everything there that we've
covered a lot of topics there. I mean,
I didn't go off on too many tangents, did I? So.
Yeah, I think you stayed on topic.
Yeah. And,
I don't think we can have Eva Echo on and not talk about your amazing tattoos. I mean, that would be a crime in itself, wouldn't it?
Thank you. Yeah, well, my wife's a tattoo artist, and it's expression, isn't it? It's always been something where the body's another canvas, so why not do something with it?
Yeah,
because like people judge people for all kinds of things, don't they? And I think you say working with the police and stuff, and I think, oh gosh, imagine seeing Eva with covered in tattoos, and because that's I always think of the police as this regimented kind of very strict kind of thing, but it's great.
It's changing that perception, reframing that. I mean, me going in and it's almost like a role reversal where I'm the one talking to them, challenging them, and it's empowering when to know that we've got to this point as a society where these things happen. We've just got to make the most of it at all times and make the most of every opportunity, because if we don't, then someone will just come along and think, well, that's not working, let's just take it away.
So I think I can speak for both of us, Frida. If you need any help with any projects, Eva, let us know. We're happy to get involved.
If you're ever in Manchester, we'll definitely come and meet up with you and say hello.
Absolutely, I'd love that.
So thanks for doing the podcast. I know you're really busy, so we really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll see you around soon.
Definitely.
Yeah, so thanks for everybody who's watching. Stay tuned. please subscribe and come back
Don't
again.
forget to subscribe.
Don't forget to. Yeah, we do a little song at the end of the podcast.
I'm not going to do it today. I've got a frog in my throat.
Come on, Frida. We have to do this. It's like,
go on then.
We do the don't forget to subscribe song. So go on, Frida. You can lead us.
1, 2, 3. Don't forget to subscribe. We've never done it right yet.
We never get it right. Come on.
No, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. We're just a bit crazy. Yeah. So anyway, thanks for coming on. It was great.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
We'll see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.